Hi again, Kirsten Kloss here with Netcast Event. We have today Steve Schiffman. Steve is joining us via Skype call. It's the second interview we've had with Steve Schiffman. The first time he phoned in, and he's now with us through the magic of Skype. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
It's really glad to be. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Great. Well, we have two books here we're showing here, and one is The Power of Positive Selling, and the second is Make the Sale Happen Before Lunch. And but the topics today are going to be quite broad. I mean, we'll touch on the books, but you can always go and get the books. But more importantly, we'll be discussing and answering questions about your sales challenges. And but to no further ado, I'm just going to pass this on to Chris Hamilton, who will start the interview. Chris,
excellent. Thank you very much, Kirsten. First off, I want to tell everyone how to reach Steve or find Steve. You can go to is it Steve Schiffman or Steven Schiffman?
SteveSchiffman.com.
SteveSchiffman.com. I'm going to read your bio off the back here, Steve. It's Steven Schiffman is the founder of DEI Sales, which has trained more than 600,000 professionals in over 9,000 companies. You're like the Energizer Bunny of training, aren't you?
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff.
Holy smokes, over the past 30 years. Yes. You've written dozens of best-selling books. Now, you just told us, what is this, book number 60? Here's 59, 60. Here's 60 or something, or we'll just do it that way?
Yeah, one of those is book, that one is 60. Yeah.
Okay, so 60 books, and you've got another one coming out again next year. So
yes.
I don't know how you find the time to be married, travel, train, all that good stuff, but good on you. You've sold well over 1 million copies, including the 25 toughest sales objections, which we actually, that's the one we interviewed you on last time, I believe.
Yes,
which is great. Power of Positive Selling, which we see up here as well. 25 Sales Habits of Highly Successful Salespeople, which was actually one of the first sales books I ever bought. And Cold Calling Techniques and Closing Techniques. And I met Steve 15 years ago, 17 years ago. I'm sure he remembers me as one of the 600,000 people that he actually trained. I was the only one.
No, I do remember you. You absolutely have burned a image in my mind, so I knew right away who you were.
It's that one thing where I burn that image and you go, not that guy again.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Steve,
hold the interview.
Yep.
The green book is transparent because it's a green screen. So give me the green book.
Yep.
We'll have to show it later on.
Okay.
I'll superimpose it later on.
Excellent. Good thing that I wrote those questions down,
okay.
Actually.
Pause.
I need the book for a sec, though, just in case I won't hold it up. So hold on for a sec here. Steve, I don't know if you caught that or not. We have a green screen behind me. Every time I hold your green book up, it's...
yeah, I'll have to superimpose
it's the ghosty book.
Yeah, it doesn't show up. Yeah.
Okay.
Go, Chris.
Okay. So, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today. And obviously, as Kirsten had mentioned, if anyone has any questions for Steve, there are some questions down the right-hand side. There's also anything after the fact of the recorded version. Those questions will go directly to Steve, and he will answer them for you. So, Steve, as you know from the last time we interviewed you, we kind of keep this open. I do have some questions that I have wrapped around a couple of the books and a few questions. I think one of the main ones, I want to start on the power of positive selling. And one of the things that you had talked about, just as you get right into the book, and it's just great advice, it's the 5 things that you can do to increase your sales. And I'll just kind of nail them off here, and we could talk a couple seconds about this. But you increase the number of dials you make a day, or how many calls you make. You improve the ratio of calls made, or the calls made to calls completed. You schedule more appointments. You close more sales, and you get more money per sale. So one thing that you went over is 4 of those are worked all around ratios and managing ratios. So I'm a stats guy at heart, so I love managing ratios to see where things come. For the kind of the newbies and some of the people that don't do this, can you kind of highlight why you feel ratios are so important in managing sales?
No, I'm glad you asked that question. I really am, because I was talking to someone the other day, and the person said to me, well, that's micromanaging. And it isn't micromanaging. As anybody who does any kind of sports realizes, that there's got to be a benchmark. There's got to be benchmarks as to how fast you're running if you're playing football, soccer, or any sport for that matter, or you're running a marathon. You benchmark what you're doing. The ratios really allow you to say, where am I in relationship to my closing sale, and how am I doing with that? So, for example, let's say somebody calls 400 people and gets through to no one. Well, then you can analyze that and say that they're not calling the right people. Let's say they call 400 people and speak to 400 people, but they don't get any appointments. Then you have to say what you're saying is wrong. So it allows you to analyze what the key aspects are that you have to improve, but without knowing what your ratios are. And it's not numbers. Sales is not a numbers game. People think it is. Mm-hmm. It's a ratios game. Without understanding what the ratios are, you can't possibly improve. You're just simply doing the same thing and hoping that something is going to be okay at the end of the day.
Isn't that the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results?
And that's what we see in sales all the time. We see that all the time in sales. It's people just doing the same thing over and over again. One of the things we should talk about at the end of today is about reinventing yourself and what that really means. But you've got to have a baseline. You have to have some idea as to what you're doing now. And the only way you can do that is with ratios.
It's interesting. I'm just writing reinventing, so I ask you at the very end here about that. Interesting you say that, because when Kirsten and I go and talk to companies, and we do more marketing than we do sales, but we do help some on sales process. Sure. One of the first things we ask is, a lot of times wrapped around their website is, how many people come to your website? And we get, don't know. Excellent. Where are they coming from? Don't know. And it's like, why'd you build a website? Right? But there's so many people out there that do not understand the ratios, understanding the numbers, and how that plays into actually making you a better person. So, in fact, I am super glad that you put that so far up in the book, and the first thing in the book, so that people can put a preface behind that and get it going. The other thing, as you move into some of the chapters against, and this is, we're talking about the power of positive selling, the 30 surefire techniques to win new customers, boost your commissions, and build the mindset for success. And really, truthfully, I think one of the great things is you broke it into 3 chapters, but I'm going to condense it into one, is believe in yourself, believe in your company, and believe in what you're selling. And I just, the positiveness of that and going through that, I just want to get your understanding of that, because I think it really resonates, and I think it's kind of like the 3 legs of a stool, and if anyone's not there, then you've got a problem, right?
Yeah. You've got to believe in yourself. I mean, somebody has to. And if it's not you, then there's no one else. I mean, you are the only person that can truly motivate you. Everybody else can say it, but you're the only one who can get yourself up in the morning and motivate yourself. So you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your product and understanding it. And really, it's a question of what I call product malleability. It's not just a question of knowing your product, but how do I adapt my product and make it work for the person that I'm dealing with, which now raises a very interesting issue. And that is, how do you understand what it is you're going to recommend to somebody? Notice I've just changed that word from proposal to recommend. Mm-hmm. How are you going to recommend something to somebody if you don't know enough about your product or enough about them? So there are 2 words that I like to play off of. One of which is that you have to have insight in order to understand what the prospect is doing, or what the client is doing, what the customer is doing. So you have to have the insight into that. And the second thing is you have to be innovative. That is, you have to be able to explain your product, but also explain it in a way that it's adaptable or acceptable to that particular prospect, that it's going to help them do something better than what they do. People buy things because it helps them do what they do better. And that's really a key aspect of selling that's so often overlooked. We think, well, they're going to buy because it's cheaper. Well, that's true if it helps them do something better, but they're not going to buy something that's cheaper that's actually inferior. It doesn't work that way.
It's we had a guest on. I'm trying to remember which one talked about this, but it was the idea behind the everything you can find about a product or any service is already online. Your customers are absolutely educated almost as much as you, and I think you hit an excellent point here, which is
they do
is how do I actually take that and work that and make it different? What's the little things that I can do with this product that you have not seen, or that you cannot do, that you cannot find online?
That's right.
That I think makes the sale, right? That's the value add.
It's being creative and innovative, but to do that, and let's just talk about a very simple product. Whatever the product is you're selling, you have to say to yourself, how do I show this person that it's going to be better than what they have? Because here's the key. Most of the products that we sell today, virtually everybody who sells something is selling something that somebody has or they know about, or one of the two. Inevitably they have it. So, for example, let's say you're selling janitorial services. Well, everybody has janitorial services. You're selling telephone, hardline telephone. Everybody's got to have a telephone line. Everybody's got to have a copier. So, what separates you out? And when I raise that issue in the seminars, inevitably the rep will say to me, "Well, I separate myself out. I'm the one that really brings to the table the difference or the differential." But it doesn't work that way, because they said the same thing at the other job and the same thing at the job before that. So you've got to really bring something different, which is innovative. You have to find some way in which you can be more creative than the other guy to show them the way in which your product really can substantially help them do what they do better.
I'm sure you've seen the fundamental shift, and I'm not calling you old, Steve. That's what the thing. But I think you've seen the shift probably from when you first started till now is completely different, right?
Yes, because we used to go in and we used to say, features and benefits. I don't talk features and benefits anymore. I really don't. I very rarely bring up features and benefits. In my own sales, I rarely bring it up. What it really comes down to is your product going to be of service to somebody, again, better than what they have? Now, that sounds very difficult, because it is difficult, because here's the key. The key is that the average salesperson is now an agent of change. They have to go in and get somebody to do something different. They weren't doing it before. In fact, most reps practice interruptive marketing. We're interrupting somebody and saying, stop what you're doing, even though it's okay, stop what you're doing, and now buy from me. So what happens is, if you just think about it, the person is going to right away be reluctant to make that change because it's been working for them. Most products work, and so therefore there's a difference. And we've also gotten into a situation where most products haven't had many innovative steps lately. I mean, it really has been a malaise of sales. That is a malaise of product sales. We're not improving our products. Now, the only the area that I can tell you that actually has improved is Apple and some of the smartphones, Android. Those phones are different. But notice that nobody needs that. They create a situation where people feel they need it, but nobody needed it. I mean, if you really think about it, when Jobs introduced the concept of an Apple phone, nobody was thinking, oh, I got to have an Apple phone. Nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
iPad, no one knew about it.
Yeah.
That's innovative. That's innovative. And he's really showing people how they can do their work better than what they were doing before. So it's the perfect example about that.
Absolutely. It's it's amazing how things have changed. I love the comment you just made, agent of change. I'm thinking about changing my title to Agent of Change, actually.
Well, but once a representative understands that, then they realize what they're up against, because they're up against the person saying, I'm okay, because that is what the average person says. I'm really okay. I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. So almost all of the objections that a representative gets really comes into that same category of I'm okay. And so you say, I'm okay. So how do I deal with that? Because they are okay. They weren't. We practice interruptive marketing. We call up somebody. We say, listen, we want to come see you. And then we want to change your mind and get you to buy from us. And the person immediately says, why? Now, they may not say that outright, but that's what they're saying. Why should I change? And you've got to figure that out for yourself.
I know you do talk in the book here. I was looking at it as you still making cold calls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And cold call is I'd say disruptive, right? As opposed to
yes, it is. Sure, it is.
But it still works for you, doesn't it? Though.
Yes. Because ultimately you've got to get in to see somebody. Now, there are all different techniques to do that, but you've got to get in to see somebody. You can't make a sale without meeting them somewhere along the line, whether it's on the phone or in person. You've got to meet somebody. Selling is one of those things where if you have nobody to sell to, you might as well just go home because there's nothing else to do.
It's
at the end of the day, you go, oh, okay, I think I'll sell to the door. I mean, you can't do that.
I'm laughing, and the reason being is because I was working with a company and they were deathly afraid of making phone calls. It was a smaller company, deathly afraid of making cold calls into companies. So one of the guys who's part owner of the company said they aggressively waited by the phone for it to ring. And
I love that line. That's great line. What a great line. Isn't that just a great line? I just love that. Aggressively waited for the phone to ring. And companies will do, and especially reps will do all kinds of marketing things, and they'll send things or they email, and nothing happens. You've got to pick up the phone to make something happen. You've got to be proactive.
Absolutely. I always give the kind of this one, right, is that, if you're starting out and you have no network, you have nothing, you're not in the industry or anything, or even starting up a company or anything, you do not have a massive amount of exposure out there. So the quickest and easiest way to get it is target the people, figure out who it is that you want to be talking to, and make those calls. And I'm going to ask you a couple
what's happening now is that people are thinking that the social media is going to do that for them, and it's not going to do it.
No.
It doesn't do what you think it's going to do.
No.
It does not bring awareness to your product. People think it does, but it does not bring awareness to the product, so they count on that.
It's a piece, is what Kirsten and I often talk about. We could rant on this for days, right? It's for us, it's a piece, but the problem is there is so much noise out there.
And often people use it as a crutch, right?
Yeah.
They think if I can just focus on that, and salespeople love to be busy. That's something that can definitely keep someone busy and focused on hope that someone's gonna buy my and aggressively use social media so you can aggressively wait at the phone.
But as I say, I give this, you got to start making cold calls, and there's ways around making a cold call. One of the things that I often tell people is if you have to make a cold call, at least try to make it somewhat warm. Get a piece of information, send it to them, and just basically say, hey, I'm going to follow up with you at Tuesday next week or early next week or something like that. And I always find if you call between that 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, when no assistant's there, this guy's not necessarily, or the person, I shouldn't say guy, gal, are not necessarily into their workday. They are more prone to at least listen to you. As opposed to if I'm 2 hours into my workday and that phone rings, I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" You're not going to get it.
Well, because you're in the middle of doing what you're doing, whatever that is, and so you're interrupting. You're absolutely right. But one of the things that I used to say to people, and it's not a contradiction, but I used to tell people, if you're going to mail something, which is fine with me, don't assume the mailing itself is going to do anything for you except maybe punch through a little bit. But it's not going to suddenly get you the appointment by itself. You still have to make that appointment.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people do mailings, and they'll mail 100 letters in a day, and then they're going to follow up, which of course they can't because it's too many letters. And then what they do, is they think, well, see, the mailing didn't work. Well, the mailing didn't work because it wasn't designed to work.
Yep.
It was designed to get you a softer approach than it is. Same with email. Same thing with email. Oh, I write a nifty email message. The guy's going to buy in, or the woman's going to buy in. But all it does is soften it just a little bit. It's not going to make the sale for you.
Absolutely not. We had a technique once actually that Kirsten and I used. We set up one of these events like we have right here. We were talking about a product and a service, and we sent it out to how many? 300 people, something like that. We sent an invitation out, handwritten envelope, and then what we did was we put the Post-it note in it saying, hey, Jim, this might be of interest to you, Chris. And we had a 25% response rate on it.
No, that's great. But that's great. That's creative. But that's what we're talking about, innovative, creative.
Yeah.
That's something that's different because people get the same thing the same way. They get the same thing. And every sales rep sounds the same. I can show you ways in which you can increase. And they go the same thing over and over again. And you've got to be innovative. But you got to have that insightfulness to understand what it is that company or that person is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, actually, there was a point, one of the books, I'm trying to remember which one, where you talked about, this leads in very well, is doing your research, spending up to 75% of your time doing research on the company. And I just have to find...
Well, it's getting information. It's really getting information, too. It's the whole process. That 75% of the work that we do is prior to ever making the proposal or recommendation. So it's everything you do to get there, including the in-person visit, as well as the research you do on Google or wherever you're going to go. All those things are necessary so that you understand that person. But, and here's the caveat, you've got to be careful that you don't make any assumptions. I had a company years ago I was working with where what they did was they produced a dossier on every prospect they were going to call on, to the point where they could actually say to them, we know everything about you, therefore we're ready to sell to you. And the person would say, what do you know about us? And they would tell them, and they go, no, that's all wrong. And because you've got to have a dialogue. You've got to have this communication piece. And let's also not minimize the relationship that you create when you see somebody for the first, the second, the third time, how you create a relationship there.
Absolutely. That's what, 7 touches on a $35,000 sale before you even get the sale on average.
Yeah, if that's what it takes. But it's important because salespeople confuse spending time with a relationship. In other words, I'll spend time with you, but it doesn't mean we have a relationship.
Yeah.
So I could go back 10 times and the guy, it's, hey, wave, wave. So you've got to say to yourself, what are you trying to do in each one of those appointments that's going to advance your sale? And that's really so basic. And I see, especially in larger sales, and I'm working with a client right now in big sales, and they really have trouble just getting in the door. And once they get in the door, they actually don't know what to do because all they do is sell. Instead of setting up the next meeting, they're selling. Well, nobody's going to buy what they sell in one shot. Not going to happen. But they try so hard to make it happen.
Probably a high ticket value item, and the one call close, right? If only those were transactional.
Well, my favorite line is a rep will say to me, and they say they don't say it quite this way, but they only want to call people who are going to buy, which I love that. That's my favorite line. I just want to call people who are going to buy. Well, okay.
Steve,
how are we going to find that person?
Steve, we always get the conversation. I just want the good sales leads, right? It's like,
yes, right.
Yeah, it's like
right.
I want the easy stuff, right? And it's like,
yeah.
And what people don't understand, sales, marketing, I interrelate the two, even though they're not the same. But as with anything in life, it takes effort, right?
That's right.
And so people absolutely miss that point, that it takes effort to get to where you are. And crazy.
Well, the other thing is it takes time.
Yes.
So you need to know your sales cycle so you can say to yourself, it's going to take me 3 months. And these are the things that I'm going to do because it's going to take 3 months of working with them before they even become interested, etc. So there's a whole concept of what the sales cycle is, what it represents, and why it's so important.
Well, you kind of touch on that in the second part of the stuff on a process as we go through that. The one thing, just on doing your research in the Power of Positive Selling, chapter 12. I'm going to highlight that to people. Excellent chapter, just at a very high level. Just your thoughts are: start with the basics, find out the names, determine the needs, pay attention to big events, and of course, I'm condensing this big time because you had stuff written underneath it, and also determine your rivals. And then you get into kind of organizing your research. So you walk through methodology and process. I felt was rather well done, and something that I don't think a lot of people actually take the time or effort to do, to tell you the truth.
In terms of understanding the competition?
Well, in fact, of actually determining who and who they're going to call on, doing the research on the company, everything. I mean, I don't think people do that well enough, to tell you the truth.
No. They will see anybody, and what happens is I'll say to them, "Why are you meeting with that person?" I'll actually ask that in a sales meeting. Why are you meeting with that person? They'll say, "Well, that's who receptionist told me to meet with," but there's no qualifications to that, and the receptionist doesn't know. He's just trying to get rid of you. So they pass you on to the first person that you can, and then you're there and you go, oh, surprise, this person has no control. But you still sell to them anyway because you don't want to say, what are you, an idiot? You don't have any control.
Absolutely. The other thing you brought up, it was just we were kind of touching on here, is also listen before you talk, right? And this is chapter 16 where you go into, you talk a lot about the 80-20 rule, but this is a reverse 80-20. Where spend 20% of your time listening, 80% or 20% of your time talking, 80% of your time listening.
Yes. And what's important there is when I talk about that, what I really want to make sure people get, it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. It's not where you're simply letting them talk or they're letting you talk. It's a combination, and your questions and your discussion really has to be based off what they say. You have to listen to what they're talking about because they're going to tell you things. They'll tell you anything. Look, here's a key factor, and maybe you hit on the book, maybe not, but we as salespeople create the flow of the conversation. When I go in and say, hello, how are you? I'm starting a conversation that you're going to say, I'm fine. That's what you say. But if I went in and if I said to you, Mr. Prospect, I was thinking about you today, and I know you're not my customer, and I'm just curious, why not? I'm creating a different flow of a conversation. I'm actually creating any conversation. I can say anything I want, but if I said that, I get a different conversation. And therein lies a very key aspect of selling, which is you create the conversation. You control the conversation. You initiated the conversation. Then, damn it, make sure you take control and lead the conversation down the path you want to go.
That's
knowing. Yeah,
no, I was going to say it's interesting. It's very similar to a concept that we had a guy on here, or in Clough, talking about, where they called framing, and you literally you control that conversation. And he says oftentimes, and sorry I cut you off, but we'll get to it in a sec. Just oftentimes two frames collide, and the stronger one actually manages, right? And it doesn't mean you have to be aggressive or anything like that. It's just taking that person, as you say, just walking them
in
down
good humor,
the path.
right? You have to do it in good humor.
Yeah. You did cut me off, so
I'm
I don't
sorry,
know.
Stephen.
No, I just want to point that out to you because we're friends, and I can tell you did cut, and I don't remember what I was going to say. So
I think we were going to talk about Alzheimer's or something.
Yes, we're going to remember. Yeah, we're going to remember. We're going to talk about something else now because I don't have a clue what I was talking.
That's
about.
okay. Don't worry about it.
But it was interesting to me. It was interesting to me at that moment.
Yeah. Well, it's that's the thing. We're amongst friends here, so we can just we could do as we please. I think, or with respect, I guess.
No. Of course.
The other thing too is as you talk about that 80-20 rule, and it's a great thing in chapter 16, and I've been told not to hold the book up because I have a green screen behind me, so I can't hold it up, but chapter 16 on page 121, I'm not holding you to that one, Stephen, I'm just telling this for the audience, is just basically on your thought process behind starting with a question, which is focusing on the person talking. This is that 80-20 rule we were just talking about. Acknowledge what's being said, and then when you're commenting on it, you paraphrase his point and ask him for, what do you do? Is this what you're talking about, type of thing. It's just as you walk through that process. And the great thing is you give examples in the book of how this actually happens. So always good stuff there. One of the things too is just after this, at the very end of that chapter, is do not be afraid of saying, I do not know.
Yes. No, let's just talk about this. Let's stay there for a minute. That is one of the biggest, there's a line that I use, which is tell the truth, it's easier to remember. Now, here's what happens. You go into a situation, somebody asks you a question, you fake it, you will never remember what you said. It's probably wrong, and it's better to say, I don't know, because that's the truth. And you can work with that answer a lot easier than you can with a falsehood or with some gibberish that you put out. So I've taken the position that I don't lie anymore. If somebody says to me, what is it going to be or how's it going to work, and I don't really know, then I'm going to tell them I'm going to think about it. Now, let me just tell you how I use that, though. When I'm in my first meeting, when I have a discussion with somebody, I really don't know what I'm going to end up coming back with, what my final recommendation proposal is going to be. So I tell them that my preliminary meeting is to get to know you and find out what you're doing, how you're doing, and why you're doing it, and when you do it, and where you do it, who you do it with. Then what I'm going to do is think about all this and come back and tell you what I think we might recommend that might really work for you. So I've already set up my second meeting. I've set up the expectation of what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And now when we come back, we're working together to try to get that right. And if I can do that, I close 85% of the sales.
Interesting you should say that. So the one thing I know is that if you follow a sales process, your likelihood of increasing your chances of closing a business or closing the business dramatically increases. And I can't remember where I saw it. There was an Aberdeen study that talked about that. And you do talk about going into mapping out a process and everything in the second book here that we're going to talk about.
And follow-up is so important in that.
Well, it's interesting because solution selling. No, not solution selling. I'm trying to remember the one I had. They nailed it out. Neil Breckham or whatever. I can't remember what it was. He nailed a great process out. Now, I mean, Steve, you got a great process too. So I'm not. don't get me wrong.
That's all right.
But
that's
it's.
all right.
I found, because I worked for a Microsoft company, and that's what the process methodology that they used to use, and I found that one when I implemented it, my close rates went sky high. When I just said, okay, right. I know that this one, and you hit the nail on the head, was if it's going to take typically 6 or 7 meetings to do this, the first one's going to be this, and we need to get to this as the next step, right? So
that's right, next step.
Yeah, and then it's always getting that, it's the next step. to get to
Yes,
that final, right?
but salespeople do this. What they'll do is, and it's unfortunate, they'll have a good first meeting,
Yep.
and they'll say, and the meeting went well, whatever that means, and then they'll blow it because they'll say, you know what, let me call you in a couple of weeks. And I go, you've got the momentum there. You're right there. What are you going to call them in a couple of weeks about? You want to set up an appointment? They'll just set it up now for a couple of weeks if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
But to call somebody in a couple of weeks after they've had time to think about it. I was in Singapore recently, and I'm working with a company there where what they do is they went in the first meeting, went in the second meeting, and they did their recommendation proposal. And then they said, why don't you think about this, and I'll give you a call in 3 weeks. Well, that's just like you're just letting the thing just drift off.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. You've got to keep the momentum. You've got to keep that prospect on the line all the time.
So what you're saying is that through that process of I don't know, that almost sets up an opportunity to touch base again within days of that initial meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. In fact, I tell people, which they are loath to do. They're loath to do this. You're going back in 2 weeks to see the person again. Call them in between and just talking about, here's what we're thinking about. I had a good meeting with you, and did you give any thought to it? Not what's changed, because that means nothing. Mm-hmm. But just go, I've been thinking about you, and here's what I'm thinking about, and they'll start to react to you. People don't want to do it because they're afraid the person will cancel out the meeting. Well, if they're going to cancel out the meeting, they're going to cancel out anyway. If you can't get the person on the phone in between your first and second appointment, you're probably not going to have a sale.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a clear qualifier right there.
It is. It really is. But people are so afraid to make that call.
Right.
So afraid to call somebody up in between and say, hey, John, I was thinking about you, or Jill, I was thinking about you. And there are a couple of things I think we could do together. And here's my thinking. What, you got any feeling for it? And now you've got this, you're building a relationship. I'm doing a webinar for a company on building sales relationships, mm-hmm. which is very difficult because we go through these various stages. And that's one way of getting to know the person and the person getting to know you, superior to what you normally do, which is, well, I'll come back and we'll just have a sales meeting.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, you brought up one thing in the book. If I keep looking down, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm trying to read through the book and try to figure out where the heck it was that I saw it. But it's don't be afraid to walk away from the sale, which yes. I think as salespeople, let me get your thought on it, and I'll give you my thoughts afterwards.
Sure.
So what do you think about that?
I think that there is a time, first of all, there is a time legitimately to walk away where it's just not going to work. This particular client, this particular prospect is going to be a difficult one to work with, and it's probably not going to happen well. So that's number one. But number two is sometimes when you say to somebody, you know what, this isn't going to work out, what they do is they defend you and they'll raise the issue as to why you think that, which actually gives you an opportunity to have a bigger discussion. So in a way, it's closing the sale on the next meeting. Because now you say, well, because here's what I'm thinking. They go, no, you're wrong. And all of a sudden they correct you and you're back in business again with them. So there's really two reasons you do that. One is because it's really, you don't want to work with the person. But the second reason is sometimes you got to say, this isn't right. And they'll defend it. They'll tell you, no, I'm interested. It's
an interesting concept behind this one too. And I that's my thought on that one is there are certain people you just do not want to work with. And unfortunately, life's too short. Why put yourself into those kind of environments where you're going to have to spend time with people you don't want to be around? What's your thought process around identifying a ideal prospect? What's your methodology saying this is, and we had a client that told us it was their ideal client was Bob, who was 35 years old. He did this, blah, 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 and he just nailed it down.
They created an avatar, they called it.
Basically,
like
they created an avatar around this person. What's your thought process around that? How do you nail that?
I look at somebody who, number one, is breathing.
Can't sell from beyond the grave.
And number two is also breathing. So I look at these two things. They're breathing well. Now I went to, and so I'll give you the example. I went to a woman years ago, and I walked into her office. She had plants all over, just plants. And I started talking to her, and I couldn't figure out what she did. And I realized what she did was put CO2 into the air. That was her function. So while she was breathing, it was really for the plants. So I look for somebody who's got vitality, who's interested in doing some change. But I'll tell you the truth, I'm not as selective as you would think. I know from experience that if I get in the door and with a major corporation, I can work my way through it to actually find where I want to go. So I don't have that great profile. I believe that certain people should have that. You're selling life insurance, you've got to have a profile of who you're looking for.
Right.
And so I agree with that, but I just don't.
Yeah. But there's got to be a certain cutoff point. Like, you're not going to work with a small one-man operation, right? So
No. Although when I started out, which is 35 years ago, I used to work with any company who had two people. No matter what it was, two people. Because what I learned was that got me to meet other people because they knew other people. So I'm not saying it was the best cost-effective method, but it was a great way to prospect.
Yeah.
And so maybe I gave up an hour. So, for example, if somebody said to me, I've got two people here, can you help us? I'd go over there for an hour. I charge a little bit. But more importantly, I met more people.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, especially in the beginning, it was crucial. Now, I don't want to say I'm a snob about it because I don't ever want to imply that. I don't want anybody to ever think that. But you are a little more selective. You know, you want a certain company, certain size.
Yeah.
Stephen, why two people? I'm just curious. What makes the difference between one-person show and two-person show? Just curious about that. Your vision on it.
It's a figure of speech, really.
Okay.
But I mean, if a guy had one guy there, just him, you know, then on the phone. Because I learned, and let me just give you this philosophy, which maybe sums that up a little bit easier. I've never said no to anybody about helping them. If somebody calls you up and has the fortitude to ask for help, you have a moral obligation to help them, no matter what that means. Now, that could be as simple as, well, here's what you do next, or try this, or read this, or do something. You cannot reject anybody. If they will call you up, and I had somebody recently calls me up, and I didn't. It's not a funny story, but it'll come out. He calls me up and he wants to know where my CDs are available, and I didn't realize he was blind. That's what was the problem. See, I didn't. But once he told me that, I got him what I had, which was a CD that really isn't for public consumption. And I sent it to him. I said, "Here, take this. Listen to this. It's better for you, you know, than trying to. You can't read the book, so do this." I mean, you got to help people. And
yeah,
every time we have you on, it's just the information that you share. Every time, the two times we've had you on, just the information that you share is amazing stuff.
Well, remember, again, we replay your last broadcast quite often, and Chris, of course, submits blog entries with snippets of the interview, so he sees it over and over and over again.
That's very nice. Yeah. I try to, you know, one of the things I really try to do when I do these programs is to give you some thoughts that maybe you haven't thought, not you guys, but that the audience hasn't thought about before. I really believe that there's more to it than just a book.
Well, believe me, you actually, anything you tell us, we kind of go, wow. You know, there's a lot of stuff. You know, it's, as we were talking before, there's things that you knew, but you know what, you need that poke, right? To say, hey, you know, remember to do this. And then there's other things where I just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, right? There's a lot of great stuff in there.
And you always need to, you know, you kind of almost need to restart that engine and revisit some of those techniques. It's always important to do that.
Now, I'm just going to take a pause for a sec here. Do we get any questions coming in for Steve?
I'm having them come through the chat now because they're really slow today. For some reason, the email is coming through like 15, 20 minutes slow. So I don't want to miss these. So we'll go get back to them. I did get one earlier on. I did forward it on, but anyways, we'll keep going.
Okay, good. Last but not least, I'm just finishing off the Power of Positive Selling. There's a lot of stuff that you have. We have about 15 minutes left here. There's a lot of stuff you have in the second book, but the one thing that you have that is the last of the 30 surefire techniques is building for the long term, which I think is phenomenal advice, because I don't think people think further than 2 minutes ahead of where they're at any given time. So,
no, let me give you a New York Life study which really summarizes that. The first year as an insurance salesperson, we'll just talk insurance for a second, you're going to get about 25% of the people that you meet with will buy from you. The second year, another 25% of the people you meet with will buy from you. The third year, 25%. Fourth year, 25%. The fifth year, 25%. However, in the second year, you start getting people from the first year. And the third year, you get people from the first and the second year. And you see, and okay, so what happens is after 5 years, according to their study, 65% of the people you met with in the first year become your clients if you keep in touch with them.
Yes.
So it's building for the long run.
Yep.
And that's where and that's why 5 years, almost inevitably, every single salesperson I meet will tell me that 5 years it got easier. Well, it got easier because you worked hard for 5 years and you built a base.
Yes. Exactly.
And that's the long term.
Interesting. That is extremely interesting. And there's a couple aspects that I play in this. Is one, referrals that come out of this too. Is so many people do not ask for referrals.
No.
And the other side is we talked a bit about it, was the constant touches. And the one thing that I think many salespeople, and I coach a lot of people on this, I'm a firm believer in email marketing. And specifically if you are even just a sales rep, every day it's funny, live and die by your list. And no one understands what that term is. But the term is everyone you meet, see if you can put them on a list. Be able to send them information and keep in front of them. And that doesn't necessarily have to be everybody you meet, but anybody that falls into your world.
No. I think you and I would agree. Anybody.
Really?
It really is yes, I've got to tell you something. My doctor is on my list. My dentist is on my list. Anybody I've ever met is on a list somewhere. And the reason for that is anybody I can get a card from, anybody I meet on the street, anybody, because you don't know who they know. Everybody knows 250 people. Yeah. Everybody knows that. The reason you know that is when you die, 250 people will show up at the funeral. So you start to understand 250 people. Everybody knows 250 people. So you never know who you're meeting.
Yeah.
You never know who they know and who they're going to refer you to. That's number one. Yeah. Number two is, I think, which is very important, is I've changed the word from referral to introduction. Salespeople are hesitant to say referrals. They always hate it. So I said, let's talk about introductions. Let's talk about who you can introduce me to. And somehow that seems better and more effective, and it works.
It's interesting because one thing that I note is that you spend.
Steve, did we lose you?
No.
Okay, we're still there. Good.
I don't know why. I don't know why this is.
Oh, internet's going up and
down.
Don't
worry about it. That's the part. The beauty of having our show like this. We actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
You never know what to expect. It's kind of like Russian roulette. Anyways, the one thing that a lot of people like, I made the mistake in my career to build someone else's list and not take personal control over the people that I made contact with. And you never know what's going to happen in your career and how it's going to shift. And the people that don't necessarily fit exactly into what you're selling at that one time could one day be a person you can sell to. And it's always important to keep that relationship at least warm and connected over your career.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's where the social networking, LinkedIn, etc., really does play into it. I think it's a way in which you keep 5, 6, 7, 1,000 people somehow connected to what you're doing.
Yeah, and you absolutely, and you don't have to be. I mean, it's one of those things where it's very, very casual, and you just keep people up to date with what's happening. That's the one thing I wish one could segment those lists on LinkedIn a little bit more, so that it would be easier to update different groups of people.
I agree.
It could be better.
Actually, you can.
It does, but it's a little quirky. It's not the easiest.
Do you want to know my trick
manage.
on that? My trick on that is when you go into the groups, or when you go into contacts, you have the ability to create your own tags against them.
Yeah.
But you can only send 50 at a time, right? The limitation on LinkedIn is sending 50 emails out. So what I do is I tag it if it's a financial person or anything like that. Once I fill up first group, I got financial 1, then I got financial 2, then I got financial 3. I got all that stuff that's in there. And then that way, I'll just take that and send it to them, and I send it to the next one, I send it to the next one, I send it to the next one. The other one that I do is when you're doing that, whatever you do, make sure that you click the button at the bottom that says "Do not share people's email addresses back and
I find
forth.
that a bit annoying as well.
Yes, it is.
But
So
mind you, that's a
there's
LinkedIn topic for another day.
That's very good. It's very interesting. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah,
Good.
and it's great because it segments your list out quite well. It's a little time consuming. It's not like doing it email marketing style, but I'll tell you what, if it's laser focused and people that you have a relationship with, it works very well.
It does take effort, then people are less likely to be overwhelmed with the information.
Absolutely. Steve, we talked earlier about reinventing yourself. Can you please tell us what you mean about that?
Yeah, this is really important. I think this is significant virtually every rep. At a certain point in your career, after you've been selling 5, 10, 20, 30 years, you almost get numb. You almost start to think that your lawn is more important than your job, meaning anything is better than what you're doing. And so what happens is you mentally check out. And what I talk to salespeople about all the time is reinventing themselves. What are the things they can do? And I go through a whole process, but what things you can do to reinvent yourself, to become the person that you are now. See, what we've done is we've lived off our goals, the same goals we had when we were 17, and now we're not 17, and we have to reestablish the goals. I talk about such things as just getting a physical, get rid of the health anxiety, redo your wardrobe, buy some new clothing. You don't have to wear the stuff you've been wearing for the last 20 years from college. Change that. Go out and change something about yourself physically that's going to make a difference. And even in your personality, you can adjust certain personality traits so that you're different, and therefore you're going to be excited about it because now it's a different challenge. That's so important for sales reps who have been selling for a long time. They've got to reinvent themselves. And the most important is reassigning their goals. They're not the same goals as they were 30 years ago. You can't have them. They've changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's, I think, a great point to end off on. And Steve, as always, on the 2 interviews that we've done with you, phenomenal information. I love it. I'm gonna hold the make the sale happen before lunch up, so that people can see it. Unfortunately, I cannot hold up the power of positive selling because of my green backdrop, and it will show through.
We'll just do a pop-up.
We'll do a pop-up on that one. Both excellent books. Just on this one, as I say, there's we didn't get a lot of time to go through this, but always a great conversation with you. There's this is 50 cut-to-the-chase strategies of getting the business results you want, and it's called Making the Sale Happen Before Lunch. Great stuff in here, like how to ask questions, know where you add value, know your personal commercial. That's a great one, rule number 11. And plan your key questions.
And I just remind people they can go to steveschiffman.com. I just have the website up here now for a second. And, of course, all of his information is on there as well.
And any of the books are available on Amazon. You can get them all on Amazon.
Yeah, and there's a link in the rebroadcast so that people can actually go straight to buy the book. So click that link, and you'll be able to pick up the book right now.
We have them on Amazon. One thing that I am going to talk on here, and I love this idea, is make calls for an hour a day. And I'll change that slightly on your rule. I say cultivate relationships for an hour a day at least, right?
I like that.
Try to figure out what that is. Just on an ending point, the importance of that is absolutely imperative. Instead of waiting aggressively by the phone, it's building relationships and getting to where you need to be. Correct, Steve?
Yeah, I love that aggressive on the phone, waiting for the phone. I love that.
Yeah,
I've got to tell you, one of the things that I enjoy about talking to you guys is you really give me an opportunity to express some of my thoughts and to really get in depth with it. Sometimes the interviews are so short that you go, okay, blah, 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 and we're done. This is a great format.
I appreciate
the opportunity to be with you.
We greatly appreciate it too. We appreciate that you would take an hour out of your life to sit with us.
And we do make the best of it. I mean, and it's true. Once you get into a rhythm of discussion, that's when the real good stuff comes out. And it's really hard to get to the point in a 4-minute CNN interview. So that's how we, look out, Ted Turner, we're coming.
No, it's great. It's great. I have to tell you, I think it's great. I hope the audience gets as much out of this as I do, because to me, it's just a wonderful opportunity to talk about selling.
Well, great. Well, and I hope you can make it for our round table. We'll hope to have I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but we'll try to get a few great people together.
Round table works.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to figure out what the topics are going to be. We're going to throw it out. There'll probably be. We're hoping between 5 and 7 McGraw-Hill authors sitting in this. We're kind of leaking this to our audience. And in fact, the reason we're leaking it is because McGraw-Hill doesn't know this yet. We're going to put them on the spot, right? And make sure that they they go forward with this. But I think it was great, Steve, as you said. If they need any gentle nudging, you'll help us, which is great.
Yeah.
But we look forward to that. We'd love to have you on. We're going to try to make sure that it's arranged so that everyone has their schedule. So it may be in 2015 before we actually pull it off. But
no, knowing Chris, he's a fire starter.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
The aim is probably going to be, but the idea is we got to have the right chemistry of people, right? That's the most important thing. And then everyone's got to be on Google so that we can do the Google Plus Hangout. That's how we're gonna set it. Anyways,
so I'm just quickly just the books. The first one, Making the Sale Happen Before Lunch: 50 Cut to the Chase Strategies for Getting the Business Results You Want, by America's #1 sales trainer. Is that what it was called? Corporate sales trainer? Is that what
Yep.
Is that your thing?
Absolutely.
And also the power of positive selling, 30 surefire techniques to win new clients, boost your commissions, and build the mindset for success. Both awesome books. All your books are awesome, though, right?
Great. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Steve.
I love the last one, 25 Toughest Sales Objections, too. That was a great book.
Isn't that great? That's a great book.
It is. They're all great.
Excellent book.
They're all great.
Great book. Great book.
Awesome talking with you, Steve. And we look forward to book number, what is it, 60, 61, 60, 75?
61 coming out. 61 is coming out.
Good
on you. That's, I don't know how you find the time.
That's amazing.
We work.
Yeah, exactly. You sleep 2 hours a night or something like that.
We work hard.
Good stuff.
But thank you, guys.
Steve, appreciate it and look forward to the next time we talk.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.